Hey guys, what's going on? Beast of Ishtar here, and today I want to talk about all of the delicious patch notes that the devs have released to us today on the stream. If you didn't catch the stream, well, that's what this video is for, to help you get caught up on what happened and what's going to change and how it affects the gameplay, hopefully in the coming days whenever they decide to release the patch. So one thing of note before we get started, once the changes are made, if you have an old card and want to change to the new card, for the first 5 days, I repeat, the first 5 days after the patch release, you'll be able to mill the old card for the same amount as the new card. After the first 5 days, you're just out of luck. Alright, and starting with gold weather. That was one of the changes that the community has decided that it needed to be more balanced, and it was kind of shitty. So they did start off by saying, starting with weather, frost is staying the same. Says the devs, which in my opinion is fine. Not sure why the community wanted to change to frost. I think it's a great effect in terms of balance. Ragnarok and drought have seen some nerfing. Instead of dealing 3 damage per row, they will now only do 2 damage per row. But let's be honest, playing gold weather and taking 9 damage per turn is overpowered. With the change, I do think the cards will be still played, but for someone who doesn't have a clear sky effect, they can manage dealing with it a little easier. Gaunter Dim. The effects have been reworded and changed to make it where you can no longer get golds off the effect, especially if it fails. That will put you at a severe disadvantage. And I think that covers the neutral side of things. So let's get into the factions, and we'll start with monsters. I think the changes made here will put Consume in a higher spot in the meta, and let's see why. Vrand Warrior will be buffed from a base stat 4 to 5. Unseen Elder will go from a base stat 4 to a 5. Necker will now be a 3 instead of a 2. Katakan will be boosted to a 5 instead of a 4, I think is what it previously is. Arrakis Behemoth will be buffed from a 5 to a 6. The devs stated the reasoning behind that was so that you can play an Arrakis and then not have to worry about someone just killing it with Azur's Lightning, which basically made you waste a turn. Nithril no longer deals self-inflicting frost damage if you have the effect on your board. Meaning if you're, say I'm running Northern Realms and I'm playing against weather, if I use frost on their side of the field and they have a Nithril out, they will no longer take 2 damage for their own frost effect. They will only deal 2 frost damage to what's on my side of the field, which is pretty awesome. That's fair. Foglet. They changed the way he leaves the field. So previously, if you had fog on, say you had it on the top row and the middle row, Foglet would spawn on whichever row was played first. So let's say he spawned on the top row. If, for example, I just cleared the middle fog on my row, Foglet would disappear. So they changed that to where even if you cleared the top row but didn't clear the middle row, Foglet will stay on the field until all the fog is gone, and that's for both sides. So if they were somehow to have a fog on their side of the field, you ended up clear skiesing your fog. As long as there is a fog present on the field, Foglet will not go away, which is pretty good. That's like I said, that's fair. It helps Consume be more, I think, better than what they were or what they currently are in the meta now. Frightener is receiving a buff as well. Currently, when you draw a card, you move adjacent units to a random row. This new effect makes it where you get to choose which unit to move to the row wherever you put Frightener. So if you put Frightener in the top row, you get to move something from the middle or the back row to the top. And it also kind of puts it in perspective, like if you have a weather effect, you can now put said unit into the weather instead of just kind of random letting it do it with RNG. But that's it for the major changes for the monster faction. Let's go over to Skellige. Brokvar Hunter. Don't worry, my Skellige players. His effect remains the same. However, they did change the veteran ability that was applied to him, which basically he gets stronger after every round, which I think that's crazy. So he will no longer have that ability. Savage Bear. Alright, so Savage Bear, which is, if you're not a purple deck player, which is, I'm horrible with names, so I'm just going to go by color. So if you're not a purple faction player, you would hate Savage Bear. So he gets buffed from a base 4 to a 5, which is good. But for Nilfgaard, majorly, or other purple faction players who summon like the Priestess of Freya or the Vicavaro Medic. Some of these names are just brutal for the tongue. Their abilities will now trigger before the bear kills them because they're only at a base stat 1. So instead of making it worse for everybody and making them base stat 2, they decided to just fix the bear. So what the bear currently, what it does now, I never paid attention because I don't use these 2 cards, is if you played the medic or you played the priestess, it would die before the effect triggered. So at least that's what I took from it. So now it just makes it a little bit more fair that when you get to play the medic, it's going to die anyway, but I still get to do the effect. So that's cool. All right, and Queen's Guard. So this is I'm not sure if this is going to be super bad or if it's just to the Queen's Guard players. So just like Brokvar Hunter, Queen's Guard is losing the veteran ability as well, which I think makes the card more balanced. So every round the Queen's Guard won't get stronger. So you pretty much would have to rely on boosting it in the grave with forget the name of the card. It's like a silver. So that's awesome. That's fair. On Crate Warrior will now go from a base stat 8 to a 9. So that's pretty good. And moving on to Northern Realms, as this is my favorite archetype, I was excited to see they have made some changes and reworks into this faction. We'll start with the Cadweenie Sergeant. He now has the Crewman ability, which, if you're not sure what that is with some of these effects, I'll put a link down in the description of a website that kind of goes over everything. But the way Crewman works is it becomes more supportive with the machine units in this faction. So basically, if some machines have the effect that if there's a Crewman ability on that row, then they get to do something. They get to basically amplify their ability. And this effect will also be applied to Blue Stripe Scout, and Siege Tower will go from a base stat 5 to a base stat 6. John Natalis, which was one of the most useless golds in this faction, he has been nerfed from a 10 to an 8, but loses the effort effect that made him useless. So he had an effect where he can make all machine units target things for damage, but then for every machine that he basically commanded for that effect, he would lose 1 stat. So he would go from 10 to 9 to 8 to 7. If you had 4 machines using this effect, he would go down to a 6. So that basically made it useless. So it's like, why would I want to play this card if he's going to go down? So the devs listened to that part of the effect, and they took it away. So that's awesome. So I can't wait to either use this in a machine deck or see someone come out with a fantastic machine build. So that remains to be seen. Faustus, the only leader of the faction to receive a change, which is a shame because I believe Radovid needs a buff to where he can lock gold cards. But Faustus will now only boost loyal units, and I think he goes from a 4 to a 5 is what they decided to do to change. So that's pretty handy. Redanian Knight would now be boosted from a 5 to a 6, which I welcome this change because it makes it where he will survive after Azor's Lightning play, which is a big deal for blue players if you're playing against weather. So you would summon a Knight and they would just play the Lightning. So it's a pain in the ass. So hopefully that fixes that. Zixtra, he will go down from a 4 to a 3, which is a huge buff to Northern Realms players because we're giving you something on the field. With a 4, it's just to play 2 cards. So now that he's a 3, that does make it a little awesome. Actually more awesome. To use. Priscilla, her effect remains the same with the exception of the 0 counter. She will now shuffle into the deck instead of being placed on the bottom. And that's it for the major changes to Northern Realms, which I'm a little disappointed that Northern Realms didn't get any super buffs, but with the new changes, maybe we'll be able to make an awesome deck that would impact the mana more than we do now, because for the high ranking matches, there is little to no play for Northern Realms, which I hate because I really love this archetype. It's awesome. Alright, Squidtail, which from now on we will say the green deck because I will end up butchering the hell out of the name. Okay, and starting off with the Gold Dragon. Not even going to try to pronounce that name. It gets buffed to a 7 instead of a 6. Neophyte will lose his shield. He'll no longer have the armor. So that's yeah. I don't think it'll change the way the card will play on his effect or anything, but just losing the 2 armor. The devs didn't think it was necessary, so I agree with that. Elias will now go from a base stat 8 to a 9. Ithany will become more fair to the person that has it on this field, because let's be honest, it's a strength stat 2 spy that allows you to play 2 of the same card, which is badass. So you can play, for example, 2 Clear Skies or 2 Rallies, or anything like that, and all you get to +2. I get a level 2 monster on my side of the field. That's shitty. So now it's going to go to a 4, which will help with that disadvantage. Still, I would still consider it a disadvantage, just not as severe as it is now. Dwarven Mercenary. The latter of his effect states that if it's an ally, boosted by 3, so I don't think he'll boost spy units. And going with that, Dragoon will now only boost a loyal unit in your hand instead of any random one, which seems to be the case throughout the changes made here regarding buffs and abilities. Like with Dwarven Mercenary or Dragoon or Folstis, it seems they're punishing, they don't want you to boost spy units, so I think that's pretty cool. Alright. Mahakam Guard will now only boost by 4 instead of 5, which I think is awesome. That's it's more, like I said, it's more fair. It seems most of the changes that I'm picking up on this seems it's not like it's previously from closed beta to open beta, where like Northern Realms, for example, went from really good to shit. Nilfgaard went from shit to really good. I think they're starting to, fine-tune some things and make them to where no matter which faction you play, it's, it's all viable. It's just based on, how good you are as a player that will determine how high you go in the ladder. And I think that's awesome. All right, so, and last but not least, it looks like the spell deck is taking a hit. The spell green deck, I mean. I think it's the Scoia'tael Weather deck, I think is what it's called. Because the devs have nerfed the Protector from a base stat 4 to a 2. And I will not shy away from the fact that I am super happy about this, because I hate playing against the spell green deck in the ladder. It's super annoying. But now we can take a look at the best faction currently at the making of this video, Nilfgaard. There are some major changes coming to this deck, which I don't think will make them weak, just more balance as a whole, which is greatly needed because this deck is superbly overpowered currently. Beginning with Vikovar Novice, he will go from a base strength of 3 to now a 1. John Calvé will go from a 4 to a 3, and along with that, his minions, the Imperial Golem, will go from a 3 to a 2, which will make the tempo play still good, but not as a massive a push in round 1 like it does now. Vikovar Medic now has the Doomed ability, which will banish it after it leaves the field. Peter will now go from a base 6 to a 4. Tibber, which is in round 3, if you're trying to card for card against your opponent and they are playing Nilfgaard and they have Tibber, they pretty much would win. Anyway, he's going from a 10 to a now 8. So instead of maxing out at 25, he'll go to a 23, which is still good. I mean, that's still amazing. But I get, like, again, it's more fair than a 25, because just a 25, one card 25 is insane. Rainfarn will now be a 7 instead of a 6. For bug fixes, they announced that Ambassador, which if you played the medic on him and you brought out Ambassador, he would heal for 12 instead of 10. So they have announced they have fixed that, so it will now only do 10 throughout. A Sire, which Nilfgaard players will hate, they fix her, well, she can no longer select golds to recycle back into the deck, which is awesome. And that is all for the major changes seen on the patch note stream. The devs assured us that they made most, if not all, changes purely based on our feedback, which is awesome. As far as I know, there was no release date on the patch, but I cannot wait for it to come out so I can try some new things and see how the meta shifts, which I firmly believe the new patch will. But this has been Beast of Ishtar. Leave a like on this video as it helps the channel. Consider subscribing for daily Gwent content, and we will catch you in the next one.